The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. 1,000 species had gathered here over the centuries to discuss trade, borders, and peace. Today, they gathered to watch a small species die. Ambassador Al of the Dominion stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall, almost 3 meters, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like 2 black holes. His people had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed empires older than human civilization. They had never lost a war. He looked at the human delegation with something close to amusement. They were so small, so soft. They had no claws, no scales, no natural weapons of any kind. They had been part of the galactic community for only 40 years. Their fleet had maybe 50 ships. Their territory was a handful of colonies around an unremarkable yellow star. Easy prey. The Dominion presents its terms to the species known as humanity, Al announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. You will surrender all colonial holdings to the Dominion. You will accept tributary status and pay annual tribute in resources and materials. You will provide 1 million of your people each year to serve as labor resources for our empire. He paused, letting the words sink in. Around the chamber, other species watched with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity for the humans, relief that they were not the target. You have 7 standard days to accept these terms, Al continued. If you refuse, the Dominion will take what it wants by force. Your species will be subjugated. Your worlds will burn. Your children will serve our empire for 1,000 generations. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Choose wisely, humans. The chamber waited for the begging to begin. Every species knew the pattern. The made demands. The weak species pleaded, negotiated, tried to find some way to survive with their dignity intact. They always failed. They took what they wanted, and the galaxy moved on. Ambassador stood slowly. She was small by human standards, barely reaching Al's chest. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age. She had served humanity for 30 years, first as a soldier, then as a diplomat. She had seen things that would break most people. She was not afraid. The United Earth Federation has heard your terms, she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. We have considered them carefully. Al leaned forward, eager for the surrender. We reject them, said. All of them, completely and without reservation. A murmur ran through the chamber. The ambassador's smile faltered for just a moment. Furthermore, continued, we accept your declaration of war. If the Dominion wants humanity's colonies, our resources, our people, then you are welcome to come and take them. She paused. If you can. The chamber erupted. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices. Some laughed at the absurdity of it. Others called for reason, for negotiation, for anything other than this madness. The delegation hissed with anger and confusion. Al raised a clawed hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was cold. You understand what you are doing, human. We have destroyed species older than yours. We have conquered worlds that make your Earth look like a pebble. You have nothing that can stop us. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something you did not. We have something you have never faced before, Ambassador. We have humanity. Pretty words, Al sneered. They will not save you. No, agreed. They will not, but our ships will, our soldiers will. Our scientists, our engineers, our farmers, our teachers, our children, every single human being who draws breath will fight you. She stepped closer to the ambassador, close enough to see her reflection in his black eyes. You think you know what war is. You do not. You have conquered the weak and called yourselves strong. You have never faced a species that would rather die than kneel. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed in silence. At the doorway she stopped. An ancient being blocked her path. The architect delegate was impossibly old, his body more machine than flesh now. His species had watched civilizations rise and fall for 10,000 years. They had seen everything. Child, he said softly so only she could hear, Do you understand what you have done? They have never lost a war. They will burn your worlds. They will kill your people. They will erase everything you have built. Looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death and too much life. How much do you know about Earth, architect, about human history? Some, he admitted. Your world is classified as a Category 12 death world. High gravity, extreme weather, toxic atmosphere by most species standards. It is a miracle your kind survived at all. It was not a miracle, said. It was stubbornness. Our world tried to kill us every single day and we refused to die. We fought ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters, and each other. We have been at war with something since the first human stood upright. She smiled again. They think they are predators. They do not understand. We were prey once too. We were small and weak and afraid. And then we decided that we would not be prey anymore. She stepped past him, then paused one last time. They have never lost a war, she said. Neither have we. And then she was gone. The architect stood alone in the doorway watching her leave. He had seen many species face extinction. He had seen them beg, surrender, flee, and die. He had never seen one smile at the prospect. He returned to his seat and began recording his observations, as his people had done for. The human species has rejected terms and accepted war, he wrote. Initial analysis suggests complete human defeat within 2 standard years. However, the human ambassador displayed unusual confidence that warrants further observation. There is a Category 12 death world. Their history is one of continuous conflict and survival against overwhelming odds. They have a concept they call spite, that roughly translates to continuing to fight even when victory is impossible, simply to hurt your enemy. He paused, considering his next words carefully. I have seen many species face I have never seen one that looked forward to the fight. The humans may be foolish. They may be overconfident. They may be about to die, but they do not seem to know it, and that perhaps is more dangerous than any weapon. He saved his observations and settled back to watch. The galaxy had just become much more interesting. 6 months after the declaration of war, Admiral Al stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human colony of New Helsinki grow larger on his. This would be easy. His third fleet had 200 warships. The humans had 40. The math was simple. The outcome was certain. All ships attack formation, he ordered. Destroy their fleet, then burn the colony. Leave no survivors. Let this be a message to the rest of their pathetic species. His fleet moved forward like a wall of death. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in minutes. They had crushed dozens of species this way. They did not believe in complicated tactics. They believed in overwhelming force. The human fleet waited. Admiral Al studied their formation with contempt. 40 ships arranged in a defensive line, protecting their colony. They would die bravely, he supposed. Some species did. It changed nothing. Fire at will, he commanded. The fleet opened fire. Space lit up with weapons fire, enough to turn a small moon into rubble. The human line should have shattered. It did not. The human ships scattered like startled birds, moving in patterns that made no sense. They did not hold formation. They did not fight like any species that had ever faced. They fought like chaos itself, ships dancing between weapons fire, appearing where they should not be, disappearing before return fire could find them. Commander smiled from her position on the UEF Defiance. She had studied every battle in recorded history. She knew exactly what they would do because they always did the same thing: overwhelming force, rigid formations, predictable tactics. They had never learned to adapt. All ships, she said calmly, execute pattern Sigma. The human fleet stopped retreating and started hunting. 15 human destroyers dove straight into the heart of the formation. They were small, fast, and expendable. The turn to destroy them, breaking their perfect formation for just a moment. That moment was enough. The remaining human ships hit the flanks like hammers. They targeted engines, weapons systems, command ships. They did not try to destroy the fleet. They tried to cripple it, to blind it, to turn it into a confused mess of damaged ships firing at shadows. Admiral Al watched in disbelief as his beautiful formation fell apart. Ships collided with each other. Friendly fire destroyed more vessels than human weapons. His commanders screamed for orders, for guidance, for anything. He had no orders to give. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The humans were not fighting fair. They were not fighting by any rules he understood. Then the suicide runs began. A human cruiser, its hull torn open and burning, turned directly toward Al's flagship. It should have been dead. It should have been retreating. Instead, it accelerated, pushing its damaged engines beyond all safe limits. "Destroy it," Al screamed. His gunners tried. They hit the cruiser again and again. Pieces of it broke away. Fire consumed its bow, still it came. At the last moment, the cruiser's remaining weapons fired everything into the flagship's engines. Then it rammed the engineering section and exploded. Al's flagship did not die, but it was crippled. Across the battlefield, other human ships did the same thing. Damaged vessels that should have surrendered instead chose to take enemies with them. Pilots ejected at the last second sometimes, and sometimes they did not. They could not understand it. Their species surrendered when defeat was certain. It was logical. It was reasonable. Why would anyone choose death when they could choose survival? The humans chose death, again and again, laughing over their communications channels as they did it. 4 hours later, Admiral Al ordered a retreat. He had lost 132 ships. The humans had lost 23. It was the first defeat in military history. Back on the High Command gathered in emergency session. They stared at the battle recordings like scientists studying an unknown disease. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Commander Al. "They were outnumbered 5-1. They should have been destroyed in minutes." "They did not fight according to doctrine," one of his generals replied weakly. "They adapted. They changed tactics mid-battle. They sacrificed ships to gain advantages." "Then study them," Al ordered. "Learn everything about this species. Find their weaknesses. Find out how to break them." The researchers went to work. Days later, they returned with their findings. None of them wanted to deliver the report. "The humans come from a world classified as a Category 12 death world," the lead researcher explained. "Extreme conditions. Their planet has tried to kill them continuously for millions of years. They survived through adaptation, tool use, and something called persistence predation." "Explain." "They would chase their prey until it died from exhaustion. Not catch it. Just follow it for hours or days until it could not run anymore. They evolved to outlast anything." The Supreme Commander's scales shifted uneasily. "Continue." "Their history is one of continuous warfare. They have fought each other constantly since they developed civilization. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet and chose not to use them. They domesticated wolves, apex predators on their world, and turned them into companions. They did the same with horses, elephants, and dozens of other dangerous animals. They conquered predators. They made predators love them." Silence filled the chamber. "There is more," the researcher continued reluctantly. "They have concepts that do not translate directly into our language. One is called spite. It means continuing to fight even when victory is impossible, simply to cause harm to your enemy. Another is called holding a grudge. It means remembering an insult forever and seeking revenge even generations later." Supreme Commander Al processed this information. For the first time in his long life, he felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to identify it. "Fear." "What is their weakness?" he demanded. The researcher hesitated. "We have not found one, Supreme Commander. Their biology has few advantages. They are not particularly strong, fast, or durable, but they have one trait that compensates for all weaknesses. What trait? They refuse to accept that they cannot win. They simply do not believe in no-win scenarios. Even when all logic says they should surrender, they keep fighting. They always keep fighting. Supreme Commander Al dismissed the researchers and sat alone in the dark chamber. He had started this war expecting easy victory. He had expected the humans to surrender, to beg, to break. Instead, he had awakened something that did not know how to stop. He began composing orders for a full military mobilization. The Dominion would throw everything it had at humanity, 10 fleets, 20 fleets, however many it took. Deep in his heart, a small voice whispered that it might not be enough. He ignored it. That was his first mistake. 18 months into the war, the galaxy watched humanity do something impossible. They stopped defending and started hunting. They had expected the humans to protect their colonies, to huddle behind defensive lines, to wait for the Dominion's overwhelming force to crush them slowly. That was what weak species did. That was what made sense. Humanity did not do what made sense. Human fleets appeared in systems the thought were secure. They struck supply lines deep in Dominion territory. They destroyed fuel depots, communication stations, and military shipyards. They came from nowhere, hit hard, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They called it cowardice. They called it dishonorable. They demanded that humanity face them in proper battle. The humans laughed. General sat in his command center and studied the map of space. Red dots marked Dominion strongholds. Blue dots marked human strike targets. There were a lot more blue dots than red ones now. The convoy from Sector 7 will be vulnerable in approximately 6 hours, his intelligence officer reported. Minimal escort, carrying supplies for 3 fleets. Nodded, send the wolves, tell them to leave nothing. The wolves were a human strike force named after Earth's ancient predators. They had adopted the name after learning that wolves hunted in packs, worked together to bring down prey much larger than themselves, and never gave up once they started tracking something. The convoy never had a chance. But the real nightmare was happening on the ground. The colony of Vega III had been conquered by the 8 months ago. They had expected the humans to submit, to work, to accept their new masters. Instead, they had started disappearing into the forests and mountains. Garrison Commander stared at the latest reports with growing frustration. Another patrol had vanished. That made 12 in the past month. No bodies, no messages. They simply went into the wilderness and never came back. Find them, he ordered his subordinates. Send more troops. Burn the forests if you have to. They tried. They sent thousands of soldiers into the wilds of Vega III. Most of them came back. Some of them did not. The ones who did come back told stories. They spoke of shadows that moved wrong, of sounds that came from everywhere and nowhere, of traps made from nothing but wood and rope that killed silently and efficiently. They spoke of a human woman who led the resistance, who seemed to appear and disappear like a ghost, who left messages written in blood. Her name was, before the war, she had been a biology teacher. She had taught children about ecosystems and predator-prey relationships. Now she taught soldiers what it felt like to be prey. They think they are hunters, she told her fighters one night, gathered in a hidden cave deep in the mountains. They have never been hunted before. They do not know how it feels to be watched, to be stalked, to be afraid of every shadow. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. We are going to teach them. They had better technology. They had more soldiers. They had orbital support and supply lines and everything an occupying force could want. The humans had something better. They had 2 million years of evolution as the most successful predators their planet had ever produced. They had ancestors who had hunted mammoths with pointed sticks. They had a deep, instinctive understanding of how to track, trap, and kill things bigger than themselves. They never adapted to the jungle warfare on Vega III. They could not. Their species had evolved as apex predators on a gentle world. They had never learned to be afraid of the dark. Humans had, and they had learned to use that fear against others. Meanwhile, something else was happening, something they had not expected. The chorus were in species that everyone thought were pacifists. They had remained neutral in every conflict for 1,000 years. They produced art, music, and philosophy. They did not fight. Until now. A chorus delegation arrived at Earth with a message. We have waited centuries for someone to stand against the. We could not do it alone, but we can help you. They brought intelligence. They knew patrol routes, fleet movements, supply schedules. They had been watching and recording for generations, waiting for this moment. Other species followed. The beings of living gas who floated through space offered their communications networks. The architects, ancient and powerful, did not fight, but they stopped selling technology to the. Trade routes closed. Diplomatic channels went silent. The galaxy was choosing sides. Ambassador stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time, she was not alone. Representatives from a dozen species stood with her. They have told you for centuries that they are invincible, she said. They lied. They told you that resistance was futile. They lied. They told you that no one could defeat them. She paused and let the silence grow. We are proving them wrong. Every day, every battle, every victory. Humanity will not stop. We cannot stop. This is what we are. This is what we have always been. In the audience, the architect delegate recorded his observations. The humans have achieved something remarkable. They have united species that have been enemies for, not through diplomacy, not through trade, but through something simpler. They have given the galaxy hope. Hope that they can be beaten. Hope that there is someone willing to do it. He paused, considering his next words. The humans fight in ways that disturb other species. They laugh as they die. They joke in the middle of battles. They name their weapons after gods of death and paint smiling faces on their ships. Some call this madness. I am beginning to think it is something else. He watched the human delegation leave the chamber, surrounded by allies. I think the humans understand something that other species have forgotten. They understand that sometimes the only way to survive is to refuse to be afraid. That sometimes the best weapon is not a gun or a ship, but the knowledge that you will never, ever give up. He saved his observations and waited. The war was entering its final phase. The hunt was about to end. One way or another. 3 years after the war began, the human fleet arrived at Prime. Admiral James stood on the bridge of the UEF Vengeance and looked at the planet on his. It was beautiful in its way. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, a living world, home to billions. It was also the heart of an empire that had killed millions of his people. Around him, 300 human warships waited for orders. They had been joined by chorus vessels, scouts, and ships from a dozen other species. The Alliance fleet was the largest ever assembled against the. It was still outnumbered. Prime was protected by the most powerful defense grid in the galaxy. Orbital fortresses ringed the planet, each one capable of destroying a fleet by itself. 400 Dominion warships guarded there. They had been preparing for this moment for months. Admiral's intelligence officer approached with the final calculations. Sir, even with our allies, the enemy has us outnumbered and their defense grid can destroy anything we send at it. The fortresses will tear us apart before we get close to the planet. Nodded, he had known this. Every officer on his ship knew this. They had come anyway. What about their fleet disposition? Standard formation, sir. They expect us to attack in waves. They expect us to follow military logic. The Admiral smiled. It was a tired smile. He had been fighting for 3 years. He had lost friends, colleagues, 2 ships shot out from under him. He was exhausted. But he was also very, very angry. "Open a channel to all ships," he ordered, "human and allied." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Took a breath. 300 ships waited for his words. Hundreds of thousands of crew members. Humans, chorus, others. They had all come here to do something that everyone said was impossible. "You know why we are here," he began. "You know what they have done. New Helsinki, Vega III, 100 other worlds, millions of dead, families destroyed, children who will never grow up. We did not start this war, but we are here to end it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The enemy thinks we cannot win this battle. They have more ships, more guns, more defenses. They have math on their side." He smiled again, and this time there was fire in it. "But they do not have us. They do not have 3 years of rage and pain and loss. They do not understand what it means to fight for your home, your family, your species." He straightened. "The thought humans were prey. They were wrong. Today we show them exactly how wrong they were. Today we teach them why you should never, ever make humanity angry." He took another breath. "All ships attack." The Battle of Prime began. It was chaos from the first moment. Human ships did not attack in waves. They did not follow predictable patterns. They scattered, regrouped, scattered again. They flew through debris fields that should have been impossible to navigate. They used asteroids as cover, as weapons, as launching platforms. The defense grid opened fire. It was designed to destroy fleets. It was not designed for targets that moved like angry bees, that appeared and disappeared, that seemed to know exactly where to be and where not to be. The orbital fortresses targeted human carriers. The carriers did not retreat. Instead, they launched every fighter they had, then continued forward, absorbing damage that would destroy any other ship. "The carrier Constitution is taking critical damage," his tactical officer reported. "They should withdraw." "They will not," said quietly. He knew the Constitution's captain. She had lost her family at New Helsinki. The Constitution did not withdraw. Instead, it accelerated toward the nearest orbital fortress. Its remaining guns fired continuously, stripping away shields, tearing into armor. The fortress's weapons tore the carrier apart piece by piece. It was not enough to stop it. The Constitution rammed the fortress at full speed. The explosion was visible from space. When it faded, the fortress was gone. The humans did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They just kept fighting. For 3 days the battle raged. Ships died on both sides. They fought with desperation because they were fighting for their. The humans fought with something more. They fought with 3 years of accumulated fury, pain, and determination. On the second day, the defense grid fell. Human engineers had found a weakness in the fortress network. Strike teams, carried by small, fast ships, had infiltrated the command stations and destroyed them from within. Many of them did not survive. On the third day, the fleet broke. Admiral watched as enemy ships scattered, fled, or surrendered. The space around Prime was filled with wreckage, human and alike. He had lost half his fleet. He had won. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It is Supreme Commander Al. He is requesting terms." Closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of everyone he had lost. Every friend, every colleague, every young officer who had died following his orders. Then he opened his eyes and spoke. "Tell him the terms are unconditional surrender, nothing less." There was silence from the planet for a long time. Then the response came, "Agreed." The bridge crew did not celebrate. They were too tired, too hurt, too aware of what the victory had cost. Looked at his officers, these men and women who had followed him into hell and come out the other side. "Send word to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them it is over. Tell them we won." He turned back to the conquered planet below. "Tell them they have learned why You do not make war on humanity." He sat down in his command chair and let out a long breath. 3 years of war, millions dead, but it was finally over. Humanity had survived. Again. The Galactic Council chamber was full. Every species that had ever attended and some that had never bothered before had sent representatives. They had come to witness history. Ambassador stood at the same podium where she had rejected terms 4 years ago. She looked older now. Everyone did. War aged people in ways that time alone could not. But she was still standing. Humanity was still standing. Across from her, Al, the ambassador who had delivered the original ultimatum, waited in silence. He was not the same being who had sneered at humanity 4 years ago. His scales had dulled. His posture was bent. He looked like someone who had watched everything he believed in collapse. The other delegates stood behind him. Supreme Commander Al was there, the military leader who had ordered the invasion. He had survived the Battle of Prime, unlike so many of his soldiers. He almost seemed to wish he had not. Did not gloat, she did not mock. There had been enough death, enough pain, enough suffering. What remained now was the ending. "The United Earth Federation presents the terms of the Treaty of New Helsinki," she announced. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "These terms are not negotiable." She began to read. "The Dominion will release all human prisoners immediately, every single one, without exception." Al nodded slowly. "The Dominion will return all territory taken from humanity, including all colonial holdings and infrastructure." Another nod. "The Dominion will pay reparations to Earth and all allied species for the duration of 100 standard years. These funds will be used for reconstruction and aid to survivors." This time, Al hesitated. 100 years was a long time. It would cripple the Dominion's economy for generations. He nodded anyway. "The Dominion's military will be reduced to a purely defensive force. No more than 50 warships. No offensive capabilities. These limits will be monitored by the Galactic Council." A murmur ran through the chamber. They had built their entire society around military power. Taking that away was taking away their identity. Al's hands trembled, but he nodded. "Finally," said, "the Dominion will teach its children what happened here. Not propaganda, not lies, the truth. You will teach them that you started a war of conquest against a peaceful species. You will teach them that you murdered millions of innocents. You will teach them that you lost." She paused. "And you will teach them why you lost." The chamber was silent. Let that silence stretch. "Do you accept these terms?" she asked. Al looked at her with eyes that had seen the death of an empire. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "We accept." He took the treaty document and signed it. His hand shook, but the signature was clear. Behind him, Supreme Commander Al signed as well, then the other delegates, one by one. It was done. The war was over. As the delegation prepared to leave, Al stopped. He turned back with a question that had clearly been eating at him for years. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you not surrender? Any reasonable species would have calculated the odds and submitted. You should have lost. By every measure, you should have been destroyed. Why did you fight?" Considered the question. The entire chamber leaned in to hear her answer. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. This was the lesson of the war. "Because you made it personal," she said simply. "You threatened our home, our families, our children, our future. You thought that would make us afraid. You thought fear would make us weak." She shook her head. "You do not understand humans, Ambassador. Fear does not make us weak. It makes us dangerous. When we are afraid for the people we love, we do not surrender. We do not run. We fight. We fight until there is nothing left to fight with, and then we find something else." She stepped closer to him. "The chorus tells stories about humanity. They say that on our world we were never the strongest or the fastest. We did not have claws or scales or armor. We had soft skin and small teeth and no natural weapons at all. She smiled slightly. So we learned something else. We learned to outlast. We learned to adapt. We learned that the key to survival was not strength but stubbornness. We could lose a battle, lose 100 battles and keep going. We could watch our friends die and keep fighting. We could face extinction and refuse to accept it. Her voice hardened. You thought you were predators. You thought humanity was prey. You were wrong. We were prey once, millions of years ago. We were small and weak and afraid of everything. And then we decided that we would not be prey anymore. We decided that nothing would ever make us prey again. She turned to address the entire chamber. Let this be a message to the galaxy. Humanity does not want war. We did not want this war. We simply wanted to live in peace, to explore, to grow, to be part of something larger than ourselves. Her voice rose. But we will not be conquered. We will not be enslaved. We will not watch our children taken away to serve someone else's empire. If you threaten us, we will fight. If you hurt us, we will fight harder. And if you try to destroy us, we will make sure you remember the attempt for 1,000 years. She looked at Al one last time. We do not start wars, Ambassador, but we finish them. The chamber remained silent as the delegation left, watched them go. She felt no triumph, no joy, just exhaustion and relief and a deep, aching sadness for everyone who had died. The architect delegate approached her. He was even older now, more machine than flesh, but his eyes were still sharp. You have changed the galaxy, he told her. They were feared for centuries. Now they are broken. Other species will see what humanity did. Some will respect you, some will fear you. What do you see? Asked. The architect considered the question. I see a young species that has learned what all successful species must learn, that survival sometimes requires fire, that peace sometimes requires war, that the desire to protect what you love can make you do terrible things. He paused. I also see a species that chose not to destroy the one they could have. You demanded justice, not revenge. You asked for reparations, not genocide. That gives me hope. Nodded slowly. We wanted to show that humanity can win without becoming what we fought against. We wanted to prove that strength and mercy can exist together. You have proven it, the architect said. The galaxy will not forget. He turned to leave, then stopped. I have been recording observations about your species since you first entered the galactic community, he said. Would you like to know my conclusion? Yes. Humanity is dangerous, the architect said. More dangerous than any species I have observed in 10,000 years. You have the capacity for terrible violence and you are very good at it. Waited. But you are also capable of great love, great loyalty, great sacrifice. You fight not because you enjoy it, but because you have things worth fighting for. That is the key to understanding your species. He smiled, an expression that looked strange on his ancient face. You are not warriors. You are protectors, the most dangerous protectors the galaxy has ever seen. He walked away, leaving alone. She stood in the empty chamber for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. The war, the death, the victory. Humanity would rebuild, the colonies would be restored, the dead would be mourned, life would go on. And the galaxy would remember. They would remember that a small, soft-skinned species from an unremarkable star had faced the most feared empire in history and won. They would remember that humanity had refused to surrender, refused to die, refused to accept that victory was impossible. They would remember the lesson. Do not threaten Earth. Do not harm its children. Do not make humanity angry. Because humans do not know how to give up. They do not know how to stop fighting. They do not know how to accept defeat. They only know how to win. Whatever it takes. For however long it takes. Until the end. That was the message of the war. the galaxy would not forget.